Welcome to the NBA DFS build. I'm Kevin Roberts here to go over the showdown slate between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets. The Minnesota Timberwolves were up 2-0 in the series, and everybody was just claiming them as the NBA Finals champions this year, or at least definitely winning this series. And here we are, Minnesota down 3-2 after Denver ripped off 3 straight wins. So we're going to go over the showdown slate. The 2-game slates are gone. DraftKings will have those 2-game slates that span 2 days. And so we will get to those at some point. Right now, salaries are not up. The contests are not available. They're only there for reservation only. So I'm not going to be covering that today. And I personally don't really like waiting 2 days. I don't like that form of DFS. It's not very fun. Like, you go in to the first day, your team just kicks ass, and then you're feeling really good, and then the next day all those guys bottom out and you don't win anything. Like that's not a good feeling. I'd rather find out right away. I either like to follow along, obviously, and sweat the results, or I like to sometimes just put my phone away and then wake up. I wake up in the middle of the night and I'll see it. It's kind of fun if you just click on your notifications. All of a sudden you have like a big win there. That's fun to me. This video is sponsored by DFS Hero. So if you're in the market for a new lineup optimizer, tool for projections, ownership, all that kind of fun stuff, you can check them out. You can get a 15% off discount if you hit our link in the video description below. All right, so it's only one game, so it shouldn't be too much to talk about. First, before I get into it, I'll just say that you can do whatever you want for showdown slates. I'll just show you real quick what they're, with barely touching anything, what they're pushing out here is the number one lineup. It has Justin Holiday in the captain slot with Anthony Edwards, Cat, Jokic, Reggie Jackson, Rudy Gobert. So that feels really gross to me. That isn't the type of build I like to do for NBA showdown slates, just because the studs usually perform like studs, and there's not as much variance with that as you'll get with like MLB or NFL. For like NFL, I love going and looking at like the top 5 or 6 projected guys and going and getting the 5th or 6th lowest owned guys of those 5 or 6. So like if you're in a game with the Cowboys and Lions, and obviously CD is going to be up there, St. Brown is going to be up there, the quarterbacks are going to be up there, maybe the running backs, but then like all the way down at like 6 or 7 is like Sam Laporta. I had a takedown because I was like, you know what, Sam Laporta is coming at 6% as the captain. Let's start with Sam Laporta at captain and see where we go. So that's the philosophy I think we can do across the board, but that like going for cheaper guys who don't have like a really, really good projection in relation to everybody else in the, on that slate. I think that's something more geared for other sports. For me personally, I prefer to do to go after like the guys who are actually logically capable of matching the highest projected guys. So on this slate, obviously Jokic is just a smash play. I talked about this when I did a Knicks Pacers showdown. I was like, okay, Brunson is going to be awesome. He projects really well, but he's probably going to be the chalkiest captain. So I'm just not going to captain him. I will absolutely roster him, but I will pivot him over to the utility slot and find a way to gain an edge at captain. I ended up going Tyrese Halliburton, and that helped me finish 19th in a GPP. So that's not always going to be the case. Like sometimes you should have played Brunson there, but that worked out. And that is the kind of strategy I'm usually going to approach these showdowns with. Either it's going to be a single entry where I'm just going to say, you know what, Jokic is awesome. I'm definitely going to put him in my utility, but I'm not going to captain him. Or if I'm doing a lot of lineups, maybe I'll just be a little bit underweight on Jokic in the captain. So 100%, that is my strategy for tonight. If I'm doing one lineup, I'm absolutely rostering Jokic, but I'm just probably not going to captain him. And I'm going to hope I can gain a major edge with somebody else that comes in at lower ownership. So right now we don't have ownership projections, which is fine. I mean, we're really just going over all the plays that I would captain and just all the other plays that I would maybe put in my lineup. So you definitely can captain Jokic. If you're running a lot of lineups, you should captain him quite a bit because he has the highest ceiling by far. If you look at DFS Hero, the captain projections, he comes in with 34 more fantasy points than anybody else. So could this be a case of getting too cute and we just should start it with Jokic at captain? For sure. It absolutely could. But I'm personally probably just going to bank on somebody else at least coming close to him to the point where I can save a little bit of money, get them lower owned and captain, and then I still benefit from Jokic at utility. So the question would be then, what guys are capable of doing that? If we just actually click on the whole game in general here, we can see Anthony Edwards is the first one, obviously. Nobody's going to, argue against that. Anthony Edwards was not great in the last game, but in 2 games in the series, he is top 63 fantasy points, and 3 times he's put up 42 plus fantasy points. I'm going to lean towards the 60 for this game. This is a massive game in Minnesota, elimination game. The series could obviously end tonight, but he's had a lot of success as a scorer in this series, and I would not be shocked at all if he came in and dropped 40 plus real points. So ownership is going to do a lot for me here, but right off the bat, Anthony Edwards is the first guy that I'm thinking about putting in the captain spot. I just imagine he's going to show up, and then you can slot in Jokic there, and I think there is enough value on this slate to start with those 2 guys like that, and then see where it gets you. So if you do that right away, you have 4.6K for the rest of your other 4 slots, and we can go all the way down and look at value like Reggie Jackson. Obviously, he played only 7 minutes in the last game, so it doesn't feel great, but Reggie Jackson is there. Justin Holiday's a little bit more expensive. He doubled his minutes at 15. Then you're going up with Christian Brown at 4K. I love Christian Brown. We'll get to him in a little bit. But if you go in there and you put in, let's say, Justin Holiday and Christian Brown, obviously the last 2 slots, you have 5.9K left to work with. And I think that's a lineup that we can feel pretty good about depending on what happens. So as far as other guys that could make sense there, if you don't like that build where it's going right now, obviously it is stretching you a little bit thin. Whereas, do you really want to trust in Justin Holiday 15 minutes getting it done? I know that's a little dicey. Christian Brown, I feel a little bit better about because he's played 25 plus minutes in each of the last 2 games, and he's been pretty productive, 16 and 25 fantasy points. So he's probably my favorite punt of this slate. And Kyle Anderson also looks good at 3.2K if Mike Conley is out again. Then you go up to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, looks awesome at 5K, played 39 minutes last game. He had 29 fantasy points, I believe. Yeah, 29. So I'm jumping ahead here. First, before we get to that, the guys that also make sense as captain, if you don't want to go Edwards or Jokic, Cat, Rudy, Jamal, all look really, really good as low-owned captain options. And then you can definitely consider Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. That's about where I would stop my captain pool. Like I said, it is a showdown slate. Anything can happen. Christian Brown can come out here and score 35 real points and be just a smash play. Or Conley can sit and Nickeil Alexander-Walker can come in and play 39 minutes and score 30 real points. Or KCP can hit like 10 threes. You just never know. You really never know what's going to happen. Or more, maybe Mike Conley himself comes in and plays and ends up being a really good value and just smashes in a must-win game 6 at home. It does, whatever you want to do, whatever game flow / narrative you want to talk yourself into, it's all on the table. But as far as cutting things down and making really good decisions and making logical choices that are most likely going to pan out, I would keep my captain player pool at Jokic, Edwards, Cat, Rudy, Jamal, Gordon, and MPJ. And I probably would have very little exposure to the captain for Aaron Gordon and MPJ just because they're very, very volatile players. They do have high ceilings, but they've exhibited pretty low floors in the series. MPJ, I've been trying him a lot in this series, and he has struggled so badly. His last 2 games, he has 30 combined fantasy points, and he's topped 31 fantasy points just once in this entire series. It's not been a good series for him. That said, he's very explosive. If I was running 150 lineups, I would definitely get some exposure to MPJ in the captain and just in general. He's going to be a little bit lower owned than he normally would be just because he's been struggling so much, but he is an explosive player. He can pop off for like 30 plus real points and get like 12 rebounds or something. It's just, he does rebound well and he can score well. So he's absolutely in play for sure across the board. Aaron Gordon's been having a pretty good series lately, 50 and 40 fantasy points. Obviously that 50 burger would have been a really good time to slot him in to the captain spot. The funny thing was that slate, when I did a showdown for the Nuggets game, I literally was going through the same exact process, And I was down to my captain being Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter Jr. Guess which one I picked? Not Aaron Gordon. So that was really, really tough because I kept going over in my head like, man, if I would have just gone Aaron Gordon, then I would have fared pretty well. But just for, just to compare, like yesterday, if you did the OKC Dallas Showdown, who was mostly in the captain for the top lineups? SGA or Luka. So it's not always going to be the case, but more often than not, you're going to want somebody who's actually pretty reliable, who actually has a ceiling, and hopefully is not super owned. So we'll see. Maybe Jokic's salary is prohibitive and people don't want to put him in the captain. If like yesterday, Luka was 14% owned in the captain. That's pretty low for a guy with that kind of ceiling. If that's going to be the case with Jokic, I would like Jokic in the captain. And the only issue there then would be it would stretch you even more thin than what Anthony Edwards is doing to me now. So I'm not locking in Anthony Edwards as the captain right now, but as things stand, assuming he's lower owned than Jokic, I do like him quite a bit. And then the other guy I really, really like in the captain is going to be Jamal Murray. He has not enjoyed a great series at all, but he has shot a lot better lately. He's shooting 50% across the last 3 games. He just hasn't really been needed that much in some of these wins. Jokic has also kind of been the alpha, and Aaron Gordon had a huge game, obviously. So there could come a situation where Jamal Murray is finally needed in this game 6, and he steps up and kind of, delivers the dagger, so to speak. Mike Conley possibly being out would obviously alleviate any concern of like the difficult matchup for him. But I like him anyways, just because I think he's got that ceiling, and he's definitely gonna be low owned in the captain. So I don't think Jamal Murray is necessarily a guy you have to cram into your utility spot, depending on what you decide to do at captain. But I do think he's a very interesting captain play just because of the ceiling and the likely low ownership. He is also questionable, but he's been questionable, so I'm not too worried about that. But I will say, you kind of go into the playoffs thinking what the injury report is kind of just like bullshit, and like you can trust these guys to play. Mike Conley, surprise scratch in the last game. A couple games ago, Donovan Mitchell didn't play, and then he ended up not returning for the entire series. So you actually don't know. So definitely keep an eye on starting lineups and just like injury report in general. And obviously if Jamal Murray were out, Reggie Jackson, Christian Brown, KCP, those values end up looking a lot better than they already do. And then obviously MPJ and Aaron Gordon would look a lot more interesting for the captain slots. It's obvious that Jokic would look significantly better as well. Okay, so where I'm at with the captain spots. Number 1, you can play whoever the fuck you want. You can do anything if you're doing a lot of lineups. But number 2, which guys I really like for the captain, and I would play the ownership ceiling game. And if you just want Jokic, that's fine. You're just stretching yourself thin. As far as value goes, and like filling out the rest of your lineup, the first domino that has to fall is Mike Conley. If Mike Conley is out again, then Nickeil Alexander-Walker is going to be mega chalk, and it's really hard to imagine him not being in the optimal. If we look at the optimal right now, that's the captain only. Christian Brown's in there at 42%. Justin Holiday is at 42%. And right now we're not getting a lot of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 16%, probably because it's being projected that Mike Conley is going to play. But if Mike Conley's out, I'm going to love Nickeil Alexander-Walker and not think twice about it. If we look at the minutes, last game, he had 39. Like I said before, he played pretty well, 29 fantasy points. Minnesota's running a slightly tighter rotation than Denver. Well, not really, actually, because Reggie Jackson only got 6 minutes and Peyton Watson got 10 seconds. So really, Denver has the tighter rotation. But only 3 guys got minutes off the bench from Minnesota: Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, Monty Morris. If Conley is back, I would imagine Morris's role is greatly reduced. Kyle Anderson's role is greatly reduced. We're mostly looking at Naz Reid as the only bench guy for the Wolves that we can feel good about. If Conley is out, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a smash. Reed is fine, and Kyle and Monte are playable, but I don't feel amazing about them. They're just cheap guys that are going to be on the floor for about 10 plus minutes, and so they're worth a shot for sure if you're running out multiple lineups. And I'll just kind of maybe play the ownership game there too. If Conley's out and you're looking at, Kyle Anderson versus Monty Morris. Let's just check the prices on these guys real quick. Monty is 2.2. Kyle Anderson is 3.2. So because of the savings, Monty Morris might get a little bit more ownership. And if that were the case, I would just prefer Kyle Anderson. He played 5 more minutes. He's a better per minute guy. So I would just take eat the other 1,000 extra bucks and take the ownership edge there. On the other side for value, let's not forget, Jaden McDaniels is playing monster minutes when he's not in foul trouble. So Jaden McDaniels is in play. The only problem is if Jaden McDaniels can be chalky, I don't really want Jaden McDaniels chalk because he doesn't really do much when he's out there. Not a good per minute guy at all. Even in 31 minutes last game, he actually was fine with 22 fantasy points. But across this entire series, that was his best game. He hadn't topped 20 fantasy points in any other game despite getting pretty good minutes. So you either have to worry that he's going to be out there the whole game doing jack shit, or he's going to get in foul trouble and bust. So I'm very willing to fade chalky Jaden McDaniels on a showdown slate. On a 2-game slate, I don't know if I'll end up going over that slate or not, but on a 2-game slate, he's a little bit more appealing because, you have to look at guys from another game and you might want to pay up for somebody. So a little bit more viable in that setting. But if he's chalky in a showdown slate, I would have less interest. Nasri, like I said, is totally fine. And then you get to Rudy and Cat. I would just kind of go with the lower owned guy. Last time it was Rudy versus Cat as far as building in a 2-game slate. And Rudy was much cheaper. And I said, well, if Rudy's going to be $600 cheaper and they project closely and Cat is way more owned, I'm playing Rudy. Yeah, sure enough, he ended with 5 more fantasy points than Cat. So that was the way to go. Hopefully you did that and that helped you win. It didn't really help me in the long run, but it was still the right call in that moment. So I would take the same approach. Cat obviously has a higher ceiling, but he's got a lower floor. Rudy has a easier path to a double-double, and obviously he can get hot with his blocks and rebounding. So, he played 40 minutes last game. He's needed to help stop Jokic and Denver inside, even though Cat's kind of on Jokic most of the time. But they're both needed out there. So they're both very, very playable. Both can be played in the captain. And if you get them in your utility, that's fine. For the Denver side, as far as value goes, Reggie Jackson is cheap. And that's about all I can say about Reggie Jackson that's good right now. KCP is kind of in no man's land as far as pricing goes, 5.8K, but he plays a ton. He finally hit a ceiling game at 31 fantasy points last game in 38 minutes. Again, kind of like Jaden McDaniels, not a huge per minute guy. The good thing you can say about KCP is he can shoot, he can hit threes, and he plays 35 plus minutes in a close game. That's where the compliments stop, I'm afraid. So since he just hit his ceiling game, I would not be shocked if he really, really didn't have a good game at this time. He just is not a high usage guy, doesn't really produce very, very well. So not very interested in that. Like I said, Peyton Watson is not playing much in this series. He only had 10 seconds, so I wouldn't even bother with Peyton Watson. Justin Holiday is getting the run as far as value goes. He is cheap at 2.8K. I would not slide him into the captain slot as this lineup right here is showing. That's just not what my strategy. I would not do that. It gets you all those good players, but I just don't see where the ceiling is when you're looking at what he's actually going to produce out of captain. I mean, last game he had 15 minutes. That's cool, but he had 4 fantasy points. So multiply that by 1.5. Not great. And then you look at like Jokic, who's getting like 85 fantasy points from the captain slot. I mean, that's a loss, man. I don't know how far you're going to get with that. Even if he has a ceiling game in this series, which is like 18 fantasy points right now, where is that going to get you? I don't know. You still have Reggie Jackson in that lineup, right? So I expect that to update, though, as projections solidify, as we know for sure Jamal Murray, Mike Conley's status, and what was the other thing? And as ownership pops more. So like then we have a better idea of like what to expect, and then we can start mapping things out. Other value for Denver, Christian Brown was the other guy I mentioned before. He's getting really good minutes. He's easily my favorite value play across the board at 4.K, just way too cheap for a guy who's playing 25 plus minutes. So he's going to be mega chalk. I have no problem with that. If I was going to slide a value play into captain when you're looking at Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, Monty Morris, these other Denver guys. It would be between Brown and Naw. If Conley's out, Naw as a value captain punt would be intriguing just because he's playing crazy minutes and he does have a ceiling as a scorer. And then Christian Brown's just getting more minutes with each passing game, 18, 25, 28. He's scoring, he's rebounding, he's blocking, he's stealing. He does a little bit of everything. The funny thing is you go back and look at Denver's playoff run last year, he proved to be like a really good dynamic glue guy. He's not really like a DFS stud, but if he's going to be out there pushing 30 minutes, he's a lock for my utility spot at 4K. And he's a little bit interesting at captain if you are going to go away from the safe options and just like take a punt. Let's see here. All right, so that really does it for me for breaking down all these options. I think you know where I stand. I do want to get different at the captain spot, but I don't want to take like a major chance if I'm doing one lineup. And just in general, I want to stick to a fairly tight player pool. So I'm going with the guys who project really well, have really nice ceilings, and just kind of steer towards guys who might be a little bit lower owned. Certainly, though, if you're doing like 150 lineups, I would still probably have Jokic as the captain and probably at least 50, probably 60% of the lineups, just because the projection gap is just obscene. So the only issue there is ownership, and does he stretch you too thin if he's in the captain slot? Right now, it kind of looks like that might be the case, which is even more reason for me to get away from that and get a little bit more contrarian in the captain slot. And as a quick summary of those options, I like Anthony Edwards as the first pivot away from Jokic, and my second favorite is going to be Jamal Murray. I think he's in for a big game that he's fucking due, that's for sure. And then for value, Christian Brown is the first one. Naw is the second one. If Conley is out, I think Naw is still viable if Conley is in, but he looks like a smash play at utility if Conley is out. All right, that's going to do it for me. Not going to get to the 2-game slate right now. Probably not at all. Depends on when they drop that lineup. I don't know. I also have to work. I don't have all day to do these kind of things. But yeah, hopefully that helps you in your process. If it does, please give this video a like and also subscribe, so I know that these videos are helping you and that you want more of them. Hopefully we can get to an MLB show later today, but if not, thank you for watching and good luck. See you at the top.